Hey, hi everyone. How are you today? I just wanted to bring you back for another bonus episode of Biz Her Way Summit. I guess we could call it an episode. I know we had the summit back in October, but we had a lot of great speakers and a lot of great topics. And we wanted to kind of bring it back to keep things fresh in your head, keep it fresh in your mind, and let you know that we're still here with the Biz Her Way Summit. But we want to close out the year with you guys and just bring some more content to you. And so, yeah, I guess I will call this an episode. I am bringing back Lauren Brown. She is the IP savvy woman, lawyer, the person who is out here making a difference for every entrepreneur, teaching you about AI, trademarking, and all of these good things. And I have Miss Lauren Brown. I just want to remind you who she is before I bring you up. She was one of the speakers of the Biz Her Way Summit. And we're going to bring her back right now. I'm going to say, hello, Miss Lauren. How are you?
I am wonderful, and you, Miss Sasha?
I am doing good. I am doing good. I'm happy to have you back because I know when we were in the summit and our conversation, it was getting good. It was getting real
I
good.
enjoyed it.
I know
Yes.
it was a lot of things that we wanted to talk about, but we had a lot on the lineup and everything, and the time wasn't available. So thank you so much for coming back and being with the audience and all of us out here. And just want to talk about, IP trademarking. We're still going to come up with a topic: the unlocking the future, safeguarding AI generated content with intellectual property. But first, before we get into that and a lot of great other things, I want you to tell everyone who is Lauren Brown.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come back and share some additional knowledge with our audience. A lot is happening in this area. So I am, first of all, retired, even though I'm still working, but I am passionate about helping startups and small businesses start off and get off on the right foot in terms of setting up their business structure, um, training, management, and intellectual property protection, because intellectual property is really a value added asset of your business. And so I have a background owning LRB Global Consulting Services. Again, I started that business after retirement. And I actually really had combined all of the skills and background in my journey in life. I've been very blessed that way. So I am a lawyer. I'm a college professor, or have been in the past. Also a manager, entrepreneur, national speaker and trainer, and community advocate. So those are parts of past lives that I've had, but all toward the goal of serving others and helping businesses with various aspects of their business. So that's who I am.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. That was a lot of hats right there. But
Mhm.
what I love the most is even how each part of who you are transcends to the next part of who you are. But I could see here and I was listening to you. It's like, okay, well, she's like one of the we call multi hyphenated women,
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and so forth. But being able to take everything that you have within your background and still fusing it to help out entrepreneurs and the things that they're doing is very phenomenal. I know right now everything is all about AI.
Yes, it
AI
is.
generated content, I mean,
Mhm.
videos, like it's so much out here to a point where it's hard to decipher the realness from AI. A real person from AI, whether it's the photos, whether it's the video generated, or even the content and the tone of it. So,
Mhm.
how should we as entrepreneurs safeguard our content?
Okay. First of all, let me say that as a business owner and an entrepreneur, you have assets in your business. And one of your assets has to be your intellectual property, because that's a part of your brand that separates you from your competition and has you stand out in the market. And that's what you want to do. You want to stand out in the market. And so, one thing I want to say about AI is that it has been around a long time, it goes back centuries. the interesting thing about AI and how we're using it now is the fact that we have the technology to take it light years beyond where it started. And so with AI, you want to think about this. You want to think about your trademarks, um, which really is one type of intellectual property. You want to think about your copyrights, where most of your content is going to fall under. And you also want to think, if you're an inventor or an innovator, you want to think about patents. Those are ways to let the world know that you are the original creator of that content, of that logo, of that tagline, of that design, of that invention. So that's one part of it. What AI has done is to challenge the intellectual property arena, and specifically the US Patent and Trademark Office and the Copyright Office, to accept creations that were generated using AI, artificial intelligence. And so let me just say that right now, anything that's created by AI is not protectable. That's the general rule. So if something is generated solely and completely by AI, you will not be able to protect it under the current policies, practices, laws, and regulations. Okay. But there's some good news about that, which we'll get into shortly. In terms of a way to approach it as a business owner, because there is some value. AI is really taking over. People are using it for marketing, operations, certain levels of decision making, creating content, you name it, there's an AI for that. So it's something that is here, it's now, and it's not going away. But the difference is the human aspect of it. So right now, the laws require that in order to protect something on the intellectual property, that it be created by a human author. And that's very clear. We have court decisions, we have all kinds of policies, we have precedent, we have long-standing definitions, right? So right now, the challenge is if something is created by AI and only created by AI, you cannot get protection. The Copyright Office and the Trademark Office is in the process of doing this, and that is to tell people, when you submit an application for registration and protection of your intellectual property, you have to disclose, you have to let them know what part of what you're trying to protect is actually generated by AI. And you do have to disclose that, because I'm going to tell you, they will find out. So let's go back to what about this content, because there's some great content, images. Really, it helps businesses become more efficient. So what are some ways? Well, one thing you can do is you can ask AI to generate something for you, but the key is going to be for you to build on that, to add a significant creativity as the human author. So what AI generated is not protectable, but what you create from that. So for instance, especially in the area of copyright, a lot of people will ask an AI tool to generate an outline. So generating an outline, but then you write the content. You're the actual creator of the content. And that is what is protectable. It's considered an original creation. So one way to protect your content is to really be involved and don't let AI do it all for you. And then that content can be protected by copyright, trademark, or patent, depending on what it is that you're doing. So that's one thing. There's some very simple things to let the world know that this belongs to you. The general rule is, if you're the creator of something, then it's yours. You own it, you control it, and you decide how it's going to be further used or distributed. And so if you, for instance, hire somebody to create an ad for you, the question becomes, who actually owns that creation? Well, technically, it's the person who did the creation, but they also, because you hired them, they agree that the finished product belongs to you. And a lot of people miss that. They say, well, if I hire somebody, it's automatically mine. Well, not really. What it is you have to have an understanding, and my background, my legal background says you need to have it in writing that
Yes.
whatever that finished product is, it belongs to you, who is the person who, commissioned that other artist or creative person to produce something for you. Okay, so what we've talked about so far is to protect the content, it has to be significantly created by a human author. So as long as you keep that human touch in there on a significant level,
Yeah.
not just pushing buttons, not just giving prompts, but
Mhm.
actually involved in the creative process, then it's potentially protectable under, again, copyright, trademark, or patents.
Okay.
The other thing of maintaining your brand and preserving your content so it doesn't get diluted is to use watermarks. For instance, Microsoft Word has a watermark
Hmm.
function, which has been there a long time. So if you put a draft or a watermark on there, that's your watermark, whoever you're further sending that to is not lets you letting them know, hey, this belongs to me.
Right.
You can control the further distribution and use of your creation by making sure that whoever is using it has your permission and consent to do so. And normally that comes with some type of royalty or compensation. So if you think about, for instance, Nike,
Hmm.
Nike is sold everywhere. And how is that sold? Because those establishments that sell Nike products have a licensing agreement with Nike. So
Hmm.
Nike gives them permission for a fee, or for a commission, for a royalty to further sell their products and display Nike's logo, which is a trademark registration.
Right.
So those are some examples. Um, you can also protect your content. That is, you can also protect your content by making sure that whatever it is that has been created, if you used AI to
Hmm.
actually make sure that the information is accurate and in compliance. And that's real important because right now, AI is not real time.
Okay.
The data and the basis of the data that AI uses is, I think, through 2021 and maybe into 2022 now.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
it's already outdated. And that's why being involved in the human element is so important, because the information may not be accurate, number one. It's something we call hallucinations. Uh, and the information may not be uh, up to date, and it may not be in compliance.
Hmm.
So those are things that we definitely want to keep in mind. There are some other ethical and legal issues to keep in
Hmm.
mind as well. And so when you're ready to talk about those, we can certainly get into that as well.
Wow, that is a lot of information. And I hope that everyone that's watching, you're really taking your notes. I mean, if you have to just pause this right now and rewind and go back, because it's very
Mhm.
important to know for you as an entrepreneur, as an author, or whatever you're doing out here in the world where you're looking to make impact, that you are, selling products or you're creating content of any sort,
Mhm.
that you really are paying attention to everything that Lauren is saying, because it's highly important. Now, one thing, if anybody's watching or ever watched any of my videos, I pretty much try to keep it real and be
Yeah.
very transparent about a lot of things because, and I'm gonna say this, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs or small business owners, we don't even look at trademarking a lot that we should. We don't even look at copyright and everything. Some people do, some people don't. And then we figure out later, oh, yeah, it's very important to do that. So, right
Mhm.
now, while you're watching and you're in that space, and if you haven't trademarked or haven't copywritten anything, it's really good to start to, look into that and going forward with it because of all the different technological things that are out here that can be, opposing what you have. Like you said, AI content really cannot be copyright written, but
Mhm.
your creation on top of that can be. So I know one time I was talking, it was a friend of mine, and we were on a meeting with some other people, and they were talking about AI, and it was like, oh no, we don't use AI. AI, it makes people lazy, so we're not going to use AI. And I'm just like, AI is really a good resource, but I can get what she was saying about the lazy part,
Mhm.
because sometimes we'll be like, okay, well, AI has given ChatGPT has given a whole lot of information. I just asked them to write a whole plan, a whole book, or whatever. Everything is there. And some
Mhm.
people will say, you know what, let's go ahead and pretty it up and let's get it out there. So it can make a person lazy depending on how much you're trying to weigh in on the AI
Mhm.
piece.
Mhm.
I know,
Mhm.
like in my professional background, a part of what I have worked in was like VMI inventory, vendor managed inventory.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
with supervisor that I had at one time, it's all about whatever is in the system. The system, the percentages, the metrics, everything that is there is already built to govern
Mhm.
what we're doing in managing inventory and so forth. So she said that, they would teach people that it's 80% system, 20% people. You allow the system to do the work. Then you go in, you look at whatever you need to look at when there are discrepancies. But
Mhm.
she taught me in a different way. She said, no, we're going to flip that because it needs to be 80% human touch.
Exactly.
20% system. Because one
Mhm.
thing a system is not going to know is seasonality. They're not going to know like when a certain river freezes up and holds up inventory from getting to the warehouses.
Mhm.
It's not going to
Mhm.
know the deep ends of things because it's not built into that system to know it. So I will always say that and use that same thought pattern when it comes down to AI. I love using. I've developed GPT. So I have GPTs out there. And I
Yes.
would say that it does really help you, you know, streamline a process. It helps you to move forward and everything. But for me, it's a great brainstormer. I love
Mhm.
brainstorming with it. And I'm like, okay, well,
Mhm.
let me go ahead and do this and do that. So then when I'm ready for it, I can pull from that. Okay, I have the outline. Let me go ahead and build from here. And
Exactly.
and sometimes it can help you find your words that you really want. Okay, I'm not going to use that exactly. So let me go and say, oh, that's a great idea. Let me flip it around. So it's
Mhm.
just the
Mhm.
different ways that you can do to maneuver the process to keep you on
Mhm.
the right end of things and to keep you be able to copyright and trademark and all those good things. So I love everything that you said. But I do want to tap into this too, because I know we're going to get back to the AI piece, but I really want to say this too, because you talked about in writing, things in writing. And that's another fail point I feel that a lot of entrepreneurs don't really do. Speakers, authors, so forth, they don't use any type of contracts. You know,
Yes.
some that do. You have some
Mhm.
that enforce it well, but you have others who be like, "Oh no, well, I thought since I pitched it, or I thought since I said, we agreed verbally, you do have to have a form of writing. You have to have NDAs. You have to have non-competes. You have to have, things written down in the form of a contract." And I just want to kind of touch on that real quick before we jump back into the
Mhm.
AI piece, because that is
Okay.
something that's highly important.
Absolutely. And I always say this, if you and another person are listening to something at the same time or watching something at the same time, and you're asked to give your take on that, you're going to come up as intelligent people. You're going to come up with two different things. Your take will not be exactly the same because of your senses, your background, your prejudices, all those kinds of things come into play. The same thing with having a conversation, the same thing with having a negotiation, and the same thing in business. Even if you start out as a conversing with someone, follow it up with a text or email is so easy to do. That way, you're both looking at the same written information. Changes that need to be made can be made, any further negotiations, all of that. But it really puts the understanding in
Mhm.
writing. And that is so important because, again, we have different levels of memorization, remembering how we remember things. That's all different because we're all human. We're different that way. And so it's real important, especially in business, to, I like to use the word consummate the deal by putting it in writing, even if it's a text or email, to put it in writing. The
Mhm.
better thing, as you mentioned, is to actually have a contract signed by the parties because that document really solidifies the understanding and the agreement that the parties have. And
Mm,
so if there are changes that need to be made, they can be made based on something that was agreed to in writing. You also talked about non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements. That's real important in business because your intellectual property is part of this. Your intellectual property, your core competence, what makes you you, what makes your business your business,
mm-hmm.
is what you have internal and what you choose to share. And that's real important because you don't want your competition to get a hold of it. So what do when you're pitching an idea, for example? And
Mm-hmm.
I run across this a lot with clients. You're pitching an idea, you're talking to somebody who really likes that idea, but if you don't have them sign a non-disclosure agreement and a confidentiality agreement saying that what we're talking about is between us, you cannot use it for anything, you cannot further share it or
Mm-hmm.
anything else, and you may have some exceptions in there, but put it in writing. That
Mm-hmm.
agreement protects you in case somebody violates it.
Yeah.
You've got a footing to stand on. And interestingly enough, in the copyright area, in order to pursue a claim of copyright infringement, that is somebody violating your copyright rights, in order for you to do that in court now, you actually have to have that copyrighted. You have to copyright that material that
Mm-hmm.
is going to be the dispute. That happened this year in 2024. It used to be that as long as you could prove what you're claiming, you're fine in court. Well, now you have an extra step. You actually have to prove and show that that material was copyrighted by the U.S. Copyright Office. Check
Okay.
that out.
Wow.
So we see how policies and practices, especially in the business arena, are interpreted by the courts later on. So my message is make sure that everything that can be protected under intellectual property is protected. Do it as early in your business as possible. Have those different contracts and documents in place just in case you have to defend. Either you have to pursue something against someone else or you get sued. You
Mm-hmm.
want to be in the best position. And, I hate to put it this way, but we're a litigious society. People will sue over anything.
Yeah.
Somebody thought they had a hair in their McDonald's food. They sued McDonald's. And McDonald's couldn't stop them from suing them, but they were in a position to, actually, they settled that case, but they're in a position to
Yeah.
defend it. And that's really what we're talking about.
Wow, that's a lot of good information right there. Let me ask this one question, and we can move into the legal and ethical parts for AI as well.
Mhm.
Um, is it true? Okay, true or false? When it
Okay.
comes to when it comes to content, social media content, because I see this a lot. People do their post, and then next thing you know, they're like, "Oh, somebody stole my post, and they're sharing it. This my content. That's anything that you share publicly. Is it truly protected because you shared it under your page, or is it just something that's open content?
Oh, that's a great question. And my answer is it depends. Let
Mm,
me say that some people, when they put it out there, and social media is a good example, when you post something, you are intending to share it.
mhm,
Okay. Doesn't mean you're giving up your rights to it, but
mhm,
you are sharing it and it is in the public domain. So part of the conversation is going to be what was your intent with posting it in the first place? Okay.
mhm,
The other thing is you can, again, you're the creator of this content. It does belong to you. So you can put a caveat, as we would say, you can put language in your posting that says that this is protected information or protected material, and it cannot be further distributed or used. So
mm,
again, you're asserting your rights. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this, and that takes me back to something about Google, and if you've been in business long enough, you may recognize this. until about maybe 10 years ago now, you used to go on Google, take stuff off Google, use it for whatever. People still do that. About 10 years ago, Google got sued
Mm-hmm.
by original content creators who said, this is my stuff, it's copyrighted, or I'm asserting my ownership rights over it. So
Mm-hmm.
what Google had to do was change. And so now when you go on Google and you find something that you like, there's a little notation that says content may be subject to copyright. And you
Yeah.
have to follow those rules. Some people put stuff out there for the public to use it, but under certain situations, there are certain steps that have to be taken. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't mind, I'd like to share a quick story, something recently. Um, this couple have a business,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been in business for a while, and on their website they had an image that had been on their website from the beginning. A couple of months ago, now this has been on their website for about 3 years. A couple of months ago, they got a cease and desist letter, which is a certain type of notice to somebody who from someone else. So they got a letter from a lawyer saying our client is the owner of that image you have on your website. And
Mm-hmm.
while we were okay with making the image public, which means anybody can use it, you had to follow certain steps, and you did not do that. And so, because you didn't do that, we are telling you now you have infringed on the copyrighted rights of our client, number one. Number two, our clients believe that they suffered certain amount of damage to the tune of, I think it was about $2,500. And you need to pay us that, and you need to take that off of your site.
Mm-hmm.
And so the client said, okay, well, we did say that we had to do certain things. And yeah, we didn't quite do everything they said we had to do to be able to use this legitimately, legally, and ethically.
Mm-hmm.
So what should we do? And our advice to them was take it off your site, number one. Number two, create your own thing. And that way you know it's yours. And
Yeah.
number three, you have to decide about whether you want to fight this because it's going to cost you way more than $2,500 to fight this in court,
Mm-hmm.
or do you want to cut your losses, say lesson learned, and
Mm-hmm.
move forward?
Yeah.
And so this is what's happening. People are getting more conscientious about monitoring
Yeah.
their intellectual property out there in the market, especially on social media, and they're asserting their rights. And so those times where you could quote kind of get away with it,
Yeah.
those times are going past very fast. And so again, wisdom says
Mm-hmm.
create your own stuff, number one, and then you know it's yours.
Yes.
Number two, follow the steps to get the permission and do what's needed in order to be able to legally, ethically, and in a compliant way to
Mm-hmm.
actually be able to use somebody else's content.
Mm. That's really good.
Mhm.
That is good.
I'm
That is a
telling you, so much is happening.
that's a great
Yes.
story. And as you're telling that story, I'm sitting here thinking, like, so a part of my business has always been like in the event production world. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember doing an event in Vegas. It was during Stellar Awards weekend. If anybody's familiar with Stellar Awards, they always have like showcases and stuff. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
I I had an event called Friday Night Live. And there was a good friend of mine who was a producer as well, doing the same type of event. But when Stellars was in Tennessee and Nashville, he was one of the top promoters, top producers of the events, and he's always had Friday Night Live. So I had permission because he was no
Okay.
longer doing it. I got permission to
Mm-hmm.
use the name because everybody knew the name. Stellar
Mm-hmm.
Wars weekend, right? So my
Yes.
very first
Absolutely.
event in Vegas for Stellars, and
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe about 2, maybe 3 months after the event, maybe 4, I got a letter, an email from Hard Rock Hotel from their
Mm-hmm.
lawyers, and they said, "Oh, we noticed that you had an event in Vegas, with Friday Night Live. That is the same name of our Friday Night Live events. And it was a cease and desist. And they wanted to
Mhm.
try to recoup money and stuff like this. Now, I would say, I'm going to pause right here and I'm going to say the rest of the story. Every entrepreneur needs to have some type of legal understanding, whether
Mhm.
that's being mentored by a lawyer, working with a lawyer, gaining wisdom. And, it's one thing to have people to do, but you need to know for yourself as well, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I
Mhm.
know a little something. So I went back to them and,
Mhm.
and I actually rebutted in a
Mhm. I
way
got it.
to
Yeah.
let them
Mhm.
know that number one, I had already did a Google search. I did a Google search on the name and I saw how Friday Night Live was used in so many different states, so many different cities,
Absolutely.
associated with so
Mhm.
many other events. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm good there because this is just for this event here. It's a whole different audience and everything. I'd already did that before having the event, but I knew with my friend, everybody knew that name associated with that type of weekend. And
Mhm.
so I wasn't afraid to talk back to the lawyers. And I was just like, okay, well, okay, I understand. I said, but number one, we didn't sell tickets. It was a free event. Number two, the audience was different from yours because this was a Christian event. This was a Christian audience during Stellar Awards weekend. So it was no way of association or taking any people away from your Friday night event. I said, then on top of that, this name is used so many other places, so many other states. So if you really had a true right to it, then no one else would be using the name. And then I
Mhm.
said, and also, and I was like, okay, and if you do, you might be trade service only in Las Vegas.
That
But at the
area.
same time, our audience was different from yours, and we didn't sell tickets. And it was a
Wow.
temporary event,
Mhm.
one
Mhm.
night only,
Mhm.
in and out of the state. Boom, we're gone.
Mhm.
I did not hear anything back from those lawyers.
Sounds
Nothing.
like you put together a really good argument. You did a couple things that I just want to highlight. One is you did homework and research first. Two, you were able to ascertain
Mhm.
who you should get permission and what you should get permission for, and you did that. And
Mhm.
number three, it was like you said, a 1 day event. Whether it's free or not is not going to be the kind of the turning point in
Yeah.
terms of the looking at the situation, but it certainly helped that you
Mhm.
weren't charging, so it wasn't something you were doing in commerce to generate revenue. But it's not a disposing factor. And that you responded. And that's the other thing I want to say is that you need to respond. Do not ignore those correspondence and communication.
Mhm.
You should respond. And by the way, part of what I also work with small businesses about, and I do a lot of training, and one of the things I say is that you should have a business, what I call a dream team. You
Mm.
should have a lawyer, a business lawyer in particular.
Yeah.
You should have a, hello? Oh, I lost you.
I'm still here. Can you see me?
Okay.
Okay. You're frozen now.
So we were talking about the dream team.
Yes.
And the dream team consists of a business lawyer, a an accountant, and preferably a CPA, because CPAs can prepare for court and they can go to court. And if you end up having to do that, then you've already got that person on your team. You should also have a go-to personal banker, a financial resource for you, because especially most banks, credit unions, and financial institutions have a small business department, and that's a wealth of not only knowledge but resource and support. So I can't underemphasize that. Your dream team should also consist of a marketing person,
Mm.
especially in today's world, especially the impact that COVID has had. I mean, I, for one, changed my business model to a certain extent as a result of COVID, but you need a marketing person.
Yeah.
The other person that should be on your team is a risk manager.
Mm.
Most people think of risk management just as insurance, but
Mhm.
it's more than just insurance. It's about your internal and external controls, cybersecurity, things like that. So again, your dream team: business lawyer, accountant, marketing person, personal banker or a financial person,
Mhm.
and a risk manager. That is the team that really helps not only to get you started on the right foot as a business owner, but it also helps you grow and sustain and grow your business and scale your business. So
Mhm.
as you grow, that team will really be advising you on what you need to take your business to the next level.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. I love that whole dream team. That's definitely true. And because a lot of times with entrepreneurs and small business owners, um, who are just still just in the business, they think about the business, they think about their products, they think about their services, but they're not thinking like a corporation would think in most
Right.
cases. And what you just described is like how to build that dream team in a sense where you're thinking corporate. I had
That's
this saying where, people want to get incorporated, but they don't want to think like a corporation.
right.
And when you think about the corporation, you want all the perks of being incorporated because we know how we know.
Mhm. Yes.
You want to have that mindset as the corporation because that's where you're going towards. Even though you're still looking at yourself like I'm a single member person in my business, or I don't even have this team yet, you still want to think on that line because that's the route that you want to go. You want to scale your business, you want to
Mhm.
excel. So when you're thinking that way, then okay, well, I have my plan. I know that I need to have a CPA. I know I need to get a lawyer because there are things I need to have. I know I need to get the trademarks. I need the patents. I need to do these things. I need contracts, and I can't do it myself.
Right.
Or even if you
Mhm.
could, you
You
still being able
shouldn't.
to outsource and give resources to somebody who really can.
That's
So
right.
it's like all these things that you want to drive yourself towards, and that is like your ultimate, it's almost on the same level of having those six-figure days or the six-figure months or years.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, you have those
Mhm.
six-figure years. Okay, you have that dream team too, because now you're on that level. You're getting to that
That's
level
right.
across the board. And so I love the fact that you said that. And I know everything we talked about, we started out with AI, we end up going to the contracts, we end up talking about ethical and legal. So let's merge it in because I know it kind of segued us into, the legal and ethical ramifications or what people can do when it comes to AI, but also let's tie it into what they can do with their business going forward as well.
Hmm. Well, that is great. And I love our conversation. It's really nice for people to hear,
Mm-hmm.
and they may have heard things, but to have it presented in a different way, number one. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, reinforce what they heard. And three, to actually take action behind that, because that's how businesses survive.
Yeah.
If you don't do these things, and to the person you were talking about earlier that says, "Oh, we don't use AI," you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be you're gonna be dusted if you
Yeah.
don't. No, you really are,
Yeah.
because of how it is permeating everything that we do, and I mean everything, to
Mhm.
your from your daily calendar to how to run your 50-employee corporation. It's there. It's not going away. As a matter of fact, there is research and testing going on right now to teach machines, because AI is one, a tool, and it's a machine, to teach a machine how to think like a human. That's
Mm.
how far people see this going.
Yeah.
And it's scary. It's scary in a lot of ways, but the reality is it's here. And the reality is, if you don't use some form of this tool in your business, it's going to determine how far your business, the lack of using this tool is going to determine and shape how far you're going to go in your business.
Yeah.
That's really the message here tonight. So let's say, as a business owner, you've
Mm-hmm.
got, you've invested in the business. You have not only spent money, but you spent time and resources. You love the logo for your business. You put it out there. But guess what? Somebody, and you don't protect it,
Mm.
somebody sees that and they say, wow, I like that. Well, I'm going to take that concept And I already know because I searched the database of the USPTO and I know it's not registered as a registered trademark. Well, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to register it as a trademark. Oh, guess what? You may have to stop using the very thing you created.
Mm.
And again, I got stories for everything I'm talking about where that actually happened. I mean, you have some, I talked earlier about some rights you have as the creator of something. You have some rights. But I'll tell you, if somebody else registers as intellectual property, they take that step to protect it, guess what? It becomes theirs.
Yeah.
And so one thing for businesses to keep in mind is that you have all of these things you're doing, but there's some basic things you need to do to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you are building your brand, number one, because that's important. Number two, you are maintaining your brand so it doesn't get diluted. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why so much is going on in this area. And we'll talk about AI in a minute. But so much is going on in this area of intellectual property protection because people's brands are being diluted. I don't know if your audience, if you have saw Coming to America, the
Mm-hmm.
first one,
Yeah.
with the McDonald's and the McDowell's. That's a perfect example of
Yeah.
somebody trying to hatch on to and distinguish himself from the arches. But the fact of the matter is, it's one arch, but still it's so close.
Yeah.
And if that happened in real life, McDonald's would be beating that door down at
Mm-hmm.
the trademark office to say, hey, we're going to contest this because it is confusing the market. And that's the standard for trademarks in particular, is what you're trying to do so similar to something that's already been protected that you're confusing the market. And if you are, you won't be allowed that protection. So protect, identify, and that's what our company does. We help businesses identify what their intellectual property is in their business because people don't always know.
Mm-hmm.
Then we take the steps necessary to protect that those assets, those intellectual property assets. They're intangible. So, there are steps that have to be taken and ultimately getting that protection. You will find that the cost, first of all, it's a business expense, but the
Mm-hmm.
cost to do that is way low than having to litigate it in court or pursue your rights in the legal system. So
Yeah.
definitely do that. In terms of AI, we talked about how AI is everywhere. It
Mm-hmm.
is a tool, it is a valuable tool, but
Yeah.
AI has its issues. There are some of the ethical considerations. We already talked about who owns the AI generated content, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the creator of the AI generated content, um, unless there is something, and I say in writing, to the contrary.
Yeah.
I either work for hire. Unauthorized use of copyright and trademark materials, training data. We got to understand, where does the information that the AI tool uses, where does it come from? Well, it comes from social media, the
Mm-hmm.
internet, period, really, is the internet. So wherever the internet is, that information is capturable. You
Mm-hmm.
can get that information off the internet. And what's happening is you have artists and all kinds of folks saying, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this.
Right.
You're using my data to populate your tool to create content for other people. And you didn't have my permission. You didn't have authorization from me, and you didn't pay me for it because it's mine. Okay. Um, unauthorized use of someone's likeness. There's a lot going on in that area, especially for
Mm-hmm.
celebrities. People are using celebrities' likenesses for lots of things without permission. I don't know if you remember during the presidential campaign, the Trump campaign got sued by several
Mm-hmm.
different performing artists because their campaign was using the image of the likeness of these artists as part of their campaigns. And they're like, well, wait a minute, stop. You can't do that. So that's another example.
Yeah.
Plagiarism,
Mm-hmm.
copying something of somebody else's without, first of all, without permission, but also without giving the proper credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
You take it as your credit when it wasn't yours to begin with. So that's plagiarism. We have something in the copyright area called fair use, which says that there's an exception. Something that is protected by copyright can be used by the public under certain circumstances, and the
Mhm.
law allows that. So fair use is another issue that comes up. Infringement, which is kind of related to the unauthorized use, is, you've protected that creation. Here's somebody else using it without permission, authorization, or
Mhm.
compensation, and you can pursue legal action against them and make them pay.
Mm.
Something else that really comes up that really affects different parts of our community and our society, and that's bias. Again, a lot of the data is based on what's on the internet.
Yeah.
I'll be the first one to say everything on the internet, first of all, is not true. Some of it is actually untrue. And when you look at the history, for instance, the history of African Americans and others, the information out there is just not accurate and true. So
Mhm.
if you're drawing from that source, you are perpetuating the bias. And so
Mhm.
that's something else to look out for. That's a real big issue in AI, especially right now with the almost instantaneous access to information. It is just not always accurate. It's not always true. And there's
Mhm.
this issue of hallucinations, which we mentioned. So these are some of those issues from an ethical and a legal standpoint that people
Mhm.
need to be aware of. So here's my suggestion. My suggestion is identify your intellectual property or find someone to help you do that,
Yeah.
protect it, but make sure it is legal, make
Mhm.
sure it's ethical. And see, as a lawyer, I always say the first question is it legal? A lot of
Mhm.
people say the first question is it ethical? Well, it could be ethical, but it could be illegal, in which case it's null and void. If
Right.
it's legal, it may not always be ethical. So
Mm.
you have that dilemma. Now, as an individual business owner, small business owner, startup, these are a lot of considerations that you really they're just not front and foremost on your mind, and that's understandable. But that's part of where the team comes from. That's
Yeah.
part of where your resources, like Biz Her Way and others out here, that's where they come in, and you really have to connect to a community to stay on top of what's going on. You have to find the right tool, because there, like I said, there's an AI for everything out there now. And so you got to find a tool. You have to vet that tool. You have to make sure that there's a solid foundation. Again, that they're not being sued. I used a tool to create a song for part of
Mhm.
my training. And
Yeah.
I did a training on Valentine's Day. And I used this AI tool to create a song about Valentine's Day. And come to find out, well, that was in February. And in October, this company got sued because they were using information that belonged to other creators
Wow.
as part of their training data. So, different segments of our society are getting wise to the fact that they are not being fully recognized and
Mhm.
compensated for the original creations that they put out here in the world. You have to stay on top of this. You have to regularly update. You have to have clear policies about how you use AI in your business and make sure that everybody signs off on that so that they all understand that this is the way it's going to be in your business. And that really is important, because if you don't stay up to date or you have a weak policy and
Mhm.
somebody violates it, you may not be in the best position to do what I ultimately call preserving your brand. So those are things to think about.
Wow. That's a lot of great stuff to think about.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody, as you're watching, I know that you're going to be contacting Miss Lauren Brown because this is something, I mean, for the information she is giving out, you cannot continuously go forward and not do something more for your if
Mhm.
you haven't already done it, you know. And some things, we haven't even thought about. Like I said, with the AI, we kind of know what to do and what not to do when it comes down to trademarks with the brand and stuff like that. But when it comes to AI, that's something that's so new for everybody. And we're
Mhm,
still navigating that whole process. So now you have
mhm,
someone here, that this is her niche, this is her thing. And she's
mhm.
telling you exactly the ways to go to be legal and ethical, legal first, and ethical
Yes,
through the process, but still being able to utilize AI as a resource and a
mhm,
tool, but use it in a way
mhm.
that can still be beneficial for you and can still be there for the long haul, when it comes
Right,
down to your copyright and your IP and everything. Um,
exactly. And
yeah, so
don't look at
that's
it as replacing you. It's going to replace some jobs. It already has begun to
yeah, we
do
already
that.
have,
But
yeah.
it doesn't replace you as the business owner, the human, the
Mhm,
driving force behind your business. It's still you, and it will always be you if you do the right thing
yeah.
all along the way. Because the way business is maintaining itself now, the courts are they always take their time to catch up to the way business is really being done.
Mhm,
And so we may get a Supreme Court. We had the opportunity for the U.S. Supreme Court to speak on this. They declined to do it for a variety of reasons. But there's cases coming through the system, and we'll soon get to the U.S. Supreme Court, I believe, and they
mhm.
will decide to really speak on this issue, in which case everybody has to follow it in the US.
Wow.
And just to know, for those businesses who do business globally, you need to check everything for that local place where you're doing business. If you're doing business in another country, you need to check their intellectual property laws. Chances are they won't be as strong as ours.
Mhm,
And for instance, in China, your intellectual property laws prevent you from really owning what you've created.
mhm,
So depending on where you're doing business, and a lot of people are doing business internationally because they are web based, and
yeah,
so you need to keep that in mind. If you're doing business globally, you need to make sure that you have somebody in that area who knows the laws and can guide you in terms of properly, not only properly doing business in that area, but also to protect your brand and preserve it, and to protect your intellectual property.
I love the fact that you brought that up because, doing global business. Because a lot of times, we could be here in the States. Of course, we're governed by the US laws and everything. And we do
Mhm.
business globally. We have clients overseas. But there are a lot of expats. There are a lot of people
Yeah.
who are now living outside the country who
Mhm.
still citizens of the US and they're doing web-based business, online businesses, but they're
Mhm.
in that country. And
Yes.
whether they're under, digital nomad visa or business visa, whatever it is, or they're not technically under that type
They're
of
just there.
visa,
Yeah.
they're there and they're doing work.
Mhm.
So it's really good that you brought that up because you really need to understand what those laws are. And, when it comes down to IP, and then also, what is it if you're in that country doing business, even though you are still a citizen of the US, or even if you are, web-based business and so forth, you still are residing in that country. So you need to
Mhm.
understand like what laws do still apply to you that is there just as much as the laws that's applying to you that is in the US, even though you're not physically there. Um,
That's right.
so it's
And it
like,
really, to a large, I was going to say, to a large extent, it depends on where your business is based. You
yeah,
could be based here, in which case you're subject to all of the laws, rules, and regulations here because your business is based here. But you may be doing business in multiple areas. And we just mentioned, doing business globally. You
yeah,
are also subject to whatever the local rules, regulations, and laws are.
yeah,
So, yeah, you really do need to be aware of that. And so, some states have, for example, here in the US, some states have, in the trademark area, they have trademark laws which protect you as long as your mark is being used in commerce in the state. So, you have statewide protection.
hmm,
But if you're doing business in multiple states, let alone globally, you have to make sure that every step is taken to protect your intellectual property everywhere you're doing business. And this is where some businesses don't quite grasp it until something goes wrong.
mm,
You know, I was trying to think of an example that happened recently of a company that was really just based in the state of Tennessee.
mhm,
They decided to branch out and start doing business in another state. Well, the name of the company was the same name of that company existing in this other state where they wanted to do business. And they
Mm,
had protected that name in the other state. Well, because Company A just had protection in the state of Tennessee, they had a problem in
mm,
that other state where the company with the same name
mhm.
had the protection. Actually, they had the protection not worldwide, but nationwide. They
Yes,
got the federal protection
yes,
with the
so,
U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And so they ran into that issue because in the beginning, it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to do business here. Well, when they got to a point where they wanted to expand, and the end of the story was they were able to slightly change their name. And they
mm,
were willing to do that in order to do business in that state. They could have decided not to do business in that state.
right.
But the problem is because that other company had national protection, they really wouldn't be able to do business in anywhere but the state of Tennessee.
Mm,
So
wow.
those kind of things happen. And again, when you're first starting out in business or you're maturing as a business owner, you don't often think about those kinds of things. Well,
Right.
what if I go beyond my own borders, my local borders? What does that mean for my business? And
Mhm.
so those are some of the issues that come up in this area of intellectual property protection.
And and that's a good point that you made because I know every time I'm like, okay, we're going to segue out, great, close out. But you know what?
Right.
I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, I got something else. But
Mhm.
it's good that you put that point up because one thing I'm a very big advocate for is business planning.
Yes.
Actually doing that business plan and really like diving into it and thinking through and out your business. So if that's one thing, so like now, okay, guys, you're watching this now, you are knowledgeable. So one minute you may not have known, but now you know. So now what you're going to do to go forward, right? So when you're in that place, especially starting a business, and a lot of people skip that business planning part of things. They want to go into the sales, they want to go into marketing, want to go to everything else. And I think that's where a lot of them find themselves in that position where they're like, oh, I got to step back for a second because I'm successful how they're doing it. They want to expand, but they
Mhm.
never thought about the different steps in the planning process in the time they could have done it to where they could
Yeah.
say, okay, this is the name that I want to have for my business. I do know I want to be global. So that's when you think those things through from the beginning to know what you need to do so you won't have to do the step back. Or you don't have to find yourself in a place where
Absolutely.
you got to do a slight change in your name or something.
That is so, so true. So, in terms of contacting me, uh, again, my company is LRB Global Consulting Services, and I'm a Series LLC by choice. My website is Lauren, Lauren, dot consults, consults.com. When you go to that site, I have an offering that was part of the BizHer Summit.
Mhm.
I have an ebook entitled Basic Copyrights, Trademarks, Patents, and Trade Secrets and the Impact of Artificial Intelligence. Now, we didn't talk about trade secrets. That's a whole session in and of itself for real. But that ebook gives you basic introductory information about those areas of intellectual property protection, but also each chapter has some information on the impact of AI.
Mm.
And as I mentioned earlier, I'm in the process of writing a book. I'm hoping that it comes out in 2025 about copyrights, trademarks, patents, and trade secrets and artificial intelligence. So the ebook is kind of a preview of what the book will be about. And then there's going to be some challenges because we have spoken about a couple of them
Yeah.
on this program, but there are others that people need to be aware of. And the other thing that's nice about it is it's ever changing.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes changing as quickly as things change, it takes time to catch up and it can be difficult. But there is a way to approach it so that you're at least halfway there when the change comes. And so that's what we're trying to do with the book.
Awesome, awesome. And I'll make sure the link is in the show notes for everyone to go and download the ebook. And then also your contact information will be there too, so they can reach out to you. And Lauren, thank you so much. This has been
Oh, you are
so
welcome.
wonderful. I'm gonna have to get you back again because I know we this is something we definitely can go in on.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
thank you so
Absolutely.
much. All right,
Okay.
everyone.
Well,
So enjoy your evening, and everyone, make sure that you share this with everyone that you know that is in business, speaker, authors, whatever it is they're doing, and you know they have a brand that needs to be trademarked or they're working with AI. Make sure that you share this information. It's really, really good and highly important for everyone to know. Thank you again, Lauren, for
okay.
being
You are welcome and welcome. Thank you to the audience and take action. Don't be afraid. It's going to be all right.
awesome. But thank you. Bye, everyone.
Uh-huh. Okay. Take care. Bye bye.